Hi, hello, welcome back. My name's Devraj. This is Mysticism in the Body. I want to continue my journey today with the great magical agent, otherwise known as the Astral Light. This is the third video in the series. And if you recall, the exciting thing about the GMA or the Astral Light is that if you get your hands on it, you can change stuff in the world. So when you look at old style, kind of old school Harry Potter type of magic, it's all about this stuff. It's all about the Astral Light. So far we've spoken a bit about this chap, Eliphas Levi, who really in the mid-1850s, with his book, originally two books, but which became two, Dogme et Rituel de la Magie, pretty much single-handedly revived the whole esoteric tradition. And this book led to the Golden Dawn. It led to a whole host of 20th century esoteric orders. And I'm just starting to read it myself in English, the John Michael Greer translation, and his commentary as well, which is a separate book. And it seems clear to me thus far that we still haven't really understood so much of what Levi was talking about, or at least I haven't. But the Astral Light is a very exciting concept, which is kind of ironic in a way, as we'll see. Because if you have the Astral Light, then you have this immense level of power. So a big chunk of esoteric studies is all about the Astral Light, and the initial complexity is trying to work out just what the Astral Light actually is. In this series, I hypothesize that it's a bit like this idea of a kind of energy which is in the body but also diffused throughout the universe, which was common to continental philosophers at the time, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, later on, early 20th century, common to Sigmund Freud with his notion of libido and thanatos, Wilhelm Reich with his concept of orgone, and about 15 years after Eliphas Levi wrote, this chap in England, Edward Bulwer-Lytton, wrote a book called Vril, The Power of the Coming Race, in which a man, through a kind of mining accident, ends up in a subterranean world, peopled by the Vril Ya, who are people who've discovered an energy latent inside their bodies and have created an amazing civilization from it. So in the era before World War II, when all talk of energy became kind of strongly socially marginalized, whether socially or philosophically, in the wake of Hitler essentially, there were all sorts of forces and energies and magnetisms believed to be in the world, and the Astral Light was merely one of them. So putting it out as it's some kind of energy that's diffused throughout the universe and inside the human body isn't necessarily so useful. Maybe it's a very small step to begin with. And then in the last episode of this series, I looked at basically these two images. This is from Eliphas Levi, the idea of Baphomet, who's strongly related to the Astral Light. And then this depiction of the same character, Baphomet, from Tarot Key 15. This is the version drawn by Paul Foster Case in the 1930s. And this is very useful because the two characters of Baphomet are very similar, but where they differ is very instructive. So we looked at that last time, the pentagram this way up, the torch dripping hardly any light, and the kind of negative Baphomet sign, holding his hands like this in a sign that to indicate that two is all there is, materiality is all there is, duality is all there is. So these are really good images to kind of meditate and reflect upon if we're trying to understand the Astral Light. Now let us continue a bit longer on our journey and recruit the assistance of another Frenchman from exactly the same era, writing at just the same time in the mid-1850s, Charles Baudelaire. At the same time as Levi was publishing his work, which would revive the whole magical tradition, Baudelaire was publishing this, Les Fleurs du Mal, The Flowers of Evil. And he got banned a fair bit in Paris, and as such actions do, of course, caused it notoriety. Everybody wanted to read it and get a hold of a copy. And it's known that Baudelaire was influenced by Levi. They were contemporaries. So let's take a look at a famous line from one of the poems in this book. Fourmis en cité, cité pleine de rêves, où le spectre en plein jour raccroche le passant. So this line is super famous, or these two lines are super famous, because some 70 years later, T.S. Eliot, a famous American poet, wrote The Wasteland and reproduced this fourmi en cité. And what the line roughly translated means is swarming city, city full of dreams, où le spectre, which is kind of like a ghost, a spectre, a spirit, en plein jour, in broad daylight, raccroche le passant. So le passant is a passerby, and raccrocher is kind of to hang up. I think they use it when you hang up the phone. So the idea is, you've got this city swarming with people full of dreams, and this le spectre, whatever it is, in the middle of daylight is arresting the attention of the passers-by. And Baudelaire's le spectre is essentially the astral light. It's this force which is grabbing your attention and kind of almost hypnotizing into looking at something. Perhaps a billboard, maybe an image on your phone. But Levi's concept of the astral light, la lumière astrale, was that it is this spectre of Baudelaire. It is this rather serpentine force which is drawing you to give attention to something. Could be positive, could be negative. If we look at the time when both of these works were written, Les Fleurs du Mal and Dogma et Rituel, it was a time when the Industrial Revolution was getting into full swing in Paris in the 1850s, and people were flocking to the cities, flocking to Paris. And this is a dominant theme, I think, of Baudelaire's Les Fleurs du Mal. What force was it that was pulling all these people to the city? They're living in some tiny little village in the countryside in France somewhere, some petit bled dans la paysage. And then, looking at their life, okay, I'm going to work for my uncle on his farm and get married to Marie or Marcel over here. It's probably not going to be a very exciting life, but there's no other option. And then with the rise of industrialism in France and newspapers and things, the possibility of your life changes. Hey, I could go to Paris, make a name for myself, become somebody. And this force is the astral light. This is what it is. It pulled people, it pulled millions of people away from the countryside and into the cities all across Western society. We were drawn by images and ideas in our mind to go to a place, often living in far more squalor than we would have been in the countryside, exploited mercilessly by the industrial machine, but we did it, as the man who used to shovel up the crap from the lion's cage in the circus said, what, give up show business? We did it because we were drawn by this idea that we would have a transformational experience if we just went to the city. Baudelaire, I believe, also formulated the city as a meeting place of heaven and hell. So here we have another big clue about the astral light. And the basic concept is, and I'm just unraveling this myself. I'm not in a state of already great knowledge of what the astral light is, just to be clear about that. But the central concept is that, when it's being used unconsciously and you're just under the grip of the astral light, you exist like these guys. They're kind of preening and posturing. They're trying to be cool. Maybe you were living in a little village in 19th century France, and yes, it wasn't very sophisticated at all, and your life wasn't exciting in any way, but you had a certain pastoral bliss perhaps attached to it. Now you're in the city and you're preening and posturing, and you're trying to be cool and trying to attract partners, and seems super cool, but actually what's happened is you've been hypnotized by Baphomet. He's in his negative form. He's not giving you much light. He's not really telling you what's going on. It's just a little bit of light you've got. And he's telling you, this is all there is. It's just material reality. And he's hypnotized you and you're kind of just following along. Yes, I'll play the game. And then this more positive Baphomet is someone who's not being hypnotized, but who rather is in control of the great magical agent, the astral light. He knows the spell that it weaves, but he's not being hypnotized by it, or she's not being hypnotized by it. The figure is androgyne. And so they're capable of making use of the astral light to forge the world or forge their life in a manner which appeals to them. So this is not a long video, but I just wanted to share this insight because I think it's really useful if you're interested in esoteric work to try to grasp what the astral light is. And it's most certainly useful. This gives, for someone like myself, this gives me a much better handle on it. What is le spectre? Le spectre en plein jour raccroche le passant. Because we can reflect on, I can reflect on, what images hook me, what ideas hook me unconsciously. And then if I can understand the hooking, if I'm getting hooked into a relationship, if I'm getting hooked into a kind of rabbit hole on YouTube, social media, why am I getting hooked in? And of course, the reason why I'm getting hooked in is because of my unconsciousness. There's something inside of me that is attracted that I'm not aware of. And if I can work out what that is and find a way to sate it, to satisfy it in a healthy way, I won't be getting so hooked. So these are all really useful things, I think, to reflect upon if you want to make some esoteric progress. And we can thank Baudelaire and Levi for the incredible insights that they've shared, because they're absolutely still relevant today, if you ask me. How many of us spend more time than we think we should staring at images on our mobile phone, staring at videos? It's astral light at work. And of course it begs the question, is there some kind of, Baphomet figure behind the scenes who's orchestrating all this, hooking us in? And in a sense, I think we need to be hooked in, because only if we're hooked in do we have a chance of unhooking ourselves. Living in the countryside in 1850s France, we were maybe in a kind of a bliss state, unaware of it. We needed to be hooked into this fantasy, grabbed hold of by the astral light, totally change our life, such that we could become more aware of what's going on inside of us and have a chance to transcend it. Not that by any means everybody does. And I think this is increasingly important if you see the grip that, say, capitalism has on the world, whether you're pro or neg or somewhere in between. It's obviously very tied into the astral light. It's constantly presenting images. It's constantly trying to hook our attention. And if we don't manage to kind of get some control back over our attention, many of us are going to be in trouble. So like I say, it's really worth reflecting on this stuff. What is le spectre to me? And why does it hook me? Okay, cool. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is very much a free-form video. I'm going to continue digging into this awesome piece of writing. 175 years old and still very fresh in many ways. Like I said, there's an excellent translation by John Michael Greer. Dogma and Ritual of High Magic. If you're interested in my stuff, put my name into Google, Devaraj Sandberg. Not too many of those around, so you'll find out anything else I'm into on YouTube, Substack, etc. And I'll see you guys again soon for some more mysticism in the body. Hopefully we can dig deeper into the astral light when I've worked a bit more out what it is. Do feel free to share any comments if you have more insights yourself. Thank you.